Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Conlin. Welcome to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. Thanks for being here. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to Pop Crime TV. And if you're listening via audio, don't forget to subscribe to The Outlier wherever you listen to audio podcasts. Okay, today I'm going to go over the very complex case of Courtney Clenney, the Miami-based OnlyFans Instagram model charged with second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Christian Toby Obumseli, who was an entrepreneur and a crypto investor. And they have just set a trial date for Courtney Clenney, December 1st, 2025. It's been about 3 years. Christian Obumseli died in 2022. And this is just a story of an incredibly volatile relationship, a fatal stabbing, and just ongoing legal battles and drama with this case. I mean, I feel like something new just unfolds every couple of months here. So I want to dive in by playing the 2022 911 call made by Courtney Clenney. I'm going to share the tab. You guys know it takes me a minute, but I've got it. And I'm actually going to put it on regular speed. So it's about 3 minutes long. And some of it is a bit hard to hear or understand, but you'll get the gist of it.
Operator Joe, what is the address of your emergency? City man, please.
3101.
And that's her dog.
Ma'am, listen to me. You need to stop screaming on the line and give me the address.
3101.
You're gonna die. I can't feel my arm.
3101.
I can't feel my arm.
Ma'am.
So my boyfriend is dying of a stabbing.
Ma'am, what is the address?
What's that? What's the address, baby?
3131.
3131 Northeast 7th Ave. Please, God, please. Come see my boyfriend.
Ma'am, is this a house apartment or a business?
512-745-3582.
Is this a house apartment or a business?
Baby, I'm so sorry. Baby.
Ma'am, can you hear me?
If you have a stab wound to his shoulder, can you sit down?
What do you mean he has a stab wound on his shoulder, ma'am?
Yes, he's bleeding from his shoulder.
Rescue, this is PD physician Juliet. The caller, ma'am, hold on one moment. The caller advised the address is 3131 Northeast 7th Avenue, 31 Northeast 7th Avenue. The phone number is verified. The caller advised that her boyfriend has a stab wound. Okay, is this a house, apartment, or a business?
Listen, please, God, please, God. Please, God,
Listen, ma'am. Listen, I'm sending help. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. I'm sending help. How old is he? Ma'am, how old is
The
he?
screaming.
Is he awake? Hello? Hello? PD, are you still on the line? Yes, we're still on the line. She didn't provide a room number or anything. No, did she tell you where he was stabbed at? She said he was stabbed on his shoulder. Okay. Do you know if there's more than one wound? No, she didn't say. She just kept screaming on the line saying that he was dying, that he needed help, and she kept apologizing. But we do have a call at that same address in reference to a fight that happened. The room number could possibly be 2201 because we already have a call that 2 people are fighting inside of that room. So they're possibly related. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give her a call back, but we do have rescue on the way, okay? Okay, thank you. Is PD responding on the 3? Yes, we're responding on.
Okay, so that was the 911 call. And if you if you caught sort of the tail end of it, I know it was kind of hard to understand. You will have heard that somebody else already called the police because of a noise complaint. And this wasn't unusual for Christian and Courtney Clenney. They definitely had a past history of getting physical with one another, and they both had been guilty in some of these situations. But in this situation, Christian Obumseli had been fatally stabbed during an argument, allegedly, and unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries, and he was only 27 years old. So let me get to the day that this happened, April 3rd, 2022, go over what happened. And also I will read directly from the arrest affidavit, so you have just the full picture here. So on April 3rd, 2022, in Miami's very upscale Edgewater neighborhood, Courtney Clenney called 911. Now, Courtney Clenney is also known as Courtney Taylor. That's her name on Instagram, where she has quite a following, OnlyFans as well. But as you heard, she reported that her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, had been stabbed. And this was during an altercation in their luxury condo at 1 Paraiso. And when police arrived, they found Obumseli with a fatal wound, a 3-inch deep stab wound to the chest that pierced his subclavian artery, which is a major blood vessel. And according to the county medical examiner, the injury was caused by a forceful downward thrust of a kitchen knife. So Obumseli was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, let me read to you from the arrest affidavit, which provides a few more details. And I want to apologize if I mispronounce anything. I feel like I am so bad. I've heard their condo name pronounced differently. Paraiso. I'm going to go with Paraiso. So anyway, this is the initial police response. MPD and the City of Miami Fire Rescue responded to 1 Paraiso residences, 3131 Northeast 7th Avenue, Unit 2201, Miami, Florida, regarding a male suffering an apparent stab wound on April 3rd, 2022. Upon arrival, officers located the defendant cradling the body of the victim with an apparent stab wound to the chest. The defendant was taken into custody, and officers rendered aid to the victim until fire rescue arrived. The victim was transported to Jackson Memorial Hospital, rder Trauma Center, where he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased by Dr. Maizioso. Now, the police response is a little bit, or the affidavit is a little bit different than what I previously read about him being pronounced dead on the scene. That's what a lot of news outlets are reporting, but let's go with the initial police response. So the defendant was taken to MPD headquarters, where post Miranda, she provided an audio and video recorded statement. Following the defendant's statement, she was released pending further investigation and consultation with the state attorney's office. And if you have been following my channel, I previously did a video with Jack Fox, and I will put that in the episode notes, where he analyzed Courtney Clenney's statements to police. He is one of the best deception experts out there. He really can pinpoint different inflections and words in language that tend to show when people are being truthful or maybe not so truthful. Okay, so the investigation itself, the victim's body was transported again to Miami-Dade County Medical Examiner's Department, and an autopsy was performed by Chief Medical Examiner Kenneth Hutchins, MD, and Dr. Hutchins determined that the cause of death was a stab wound to the chest, and the manner of death was homicide. Specifically, he found that the victim was stabbed and that the knife punctured the subclavian artery in his right chest. The knife entered a downward angle to the depth of 8 centimeters. That seems deep to me, in my opinion. Following the medical examiner's findings, MPD presented and consulted with the state attorney's office regarding the initial facts. As a result, various investigative steps were taken by the MPD and state attorney's office, including several warrants and subpoenas. Additionally, information was received from other out-of-state law enforcement agencies. And that is, I believe, some of the previous domestic violence cases. So state attorney's office prosecutors have reviewed video and recorded statements, 911 calls, records, and data, including a cell phone extraction data collectively referred to herein as evidence. Accordingly, evidence obtained showed the defendant and the victim had a kind of a volatile relationship since November of 2020, with multiple incidents of domestic violence from both sides over the period of their relationships. One Paraiso security and building staff documented so many incidents of arguing, including complaints from tenants as far as 2 floors above the defendant and the victim's unit, that One Paraiso management was moving towards legal action to evict the defendant and the victim from the condo. Now, while certainly not one-sided, the evidence shows that there were prior incidents of the defendant being physically violent with the victim. For example, in July of 2021, the defendant was arrested in Las Vegas for domestic battery on the victim in their hotel. Similarly, surveillance from One Paraiso showed an incident in February of 2022 where the defendant aggressively attacked the victim in the elevator. And this elevator video went viral when Christian first was killed. This was definitely circulating and making the rounds here. And it's really a disturbing video. Now, the defendant and the victim moved into the apartment at One Paraiso in January of 2022. Almost immediately, incidents of violence and arguments began. I'm going to skip through this stuff because it just sort of talks about how they broke up and then they kind of rekindled their relationship a few days before this incident. So evidence shows that on Sunday, we're kind of getting into what happened here. On Sunday, April 3rd, 2022, it began peacefully with the defendant and the victim playing with their dogs in the apartment. Those were the dogs that you heard barking on the 911 call. And just a FYI, I might paraphrase a bit as I go through this, but at some point, the victim, Christian Obumseli, left the apartment and returned with Subway sandwiches for himself and the defendant, Courtney Clenney. Key fob records show the victim left the apartment at 1:15 p.m. and returned at 4:32 p.m. Surveillance video shows the victim returning to the apartment at the time via service elevator with one of their 2 dogs and actually leaving the elevator at 4:33 p.m. At the same time, the defendant finished and uploaded an Instagram live video to her page. Call detail records show the defendant called the victim at 4:01 p.m. just before she went live on Instagram, and again at 4:33 p.m. shortly after posting the live video and his arrival into the apartment. Based on records and testimony from the defendant's mother, Deborah Clenney, via a recorded telephone call with police, a time frame for when the stabbing occurred was able to be determined. In that recorded call, Deborah Clenney confirmed that she was on the phone with the defendant via 2 phone calls, one that started at 4:43 p.m. and continued until about 4:56 p.m. Deborah Clenney further confirmed that she was on the phone with her daughter, the defendant, at the time of the incident. Thus, the stabbing must have occurred between 4:43 p.m. and 4:57 p.m. So that would be fewer than 10 minutes after Christian returned to the apartment. That's a very short amount of time to get that angry, in my opinion. I guess not, but anyway, the defendant's call, I guess I should take that back, to get angry to the point of using a knife as a deadly weapon. But the defendant's call detail record shows the aforementioned calls reflecting that the defendant called Deborah Clenney at 4:43 for a call that lasted just over 6 minutes until 4:49 p.m. And then a second call at 4:49 p.m., a little over 7 minutes until 4:56 p.m. Accordingly, again, the evidence establishes that the stabbings must have occurred in the intervening 13 minutes. So at the same time that Courtney Clenney called her mom, her neighbors began calling One Paraiso, the apartment complex, to report a disturbance at the apartment. So the apartment, One Paraiso, that security team also called 911 at 4:46 p.m., notifying them of the disturbance. And this is how 911 kind of put that together, that they also had another call. And so she said, oh, maybe it's the same unit. 11 minutes later, at 4:57 p.m., the defendant called 911. That's when Courtney Clenney called 911 to inform the police that the victim was suffering from a stab wound, and requested help. On that call, the victim can be heard in the background repeatedly saying he is dying and he cannot feel his arm. And I also want to point out, many of you probably heard in that call, Courtney Clenney say, quote, "I'm so sorry, baby." She's apologizing. In her telephone recorded statement to police on the date of the incident, Deborah Clenney stated she heard the defendant, her daughter, yelling at the victim to leave the apartment, and the defendant saying, quote, that the victim was lying. And her explanation to the police regarding the content of the phone calls that day, Deborah Clenney did not say that she discussed the incident with the defendant. However, investigators know that Deborah Clenney did communicate with the defendant about the incident because investigators saw a text message from, quote, mom, on the defendant's phone recorded at 5:25 p.m. that mentions, quote, self-defense, and advised her not to say anything to investigators without an attorney. So in addition to omitting her conversations with her daughter, Deborah Clenney's recorded statement also omits any claim that Courtney Clenney said she was being attacked by Christian Obumseli during that call. So although Courtney Clenney admitted to having caused Christian Obumseli, his injuries in her post-Miranda recorded statement, she also provided several inconsistent accounts about the incident. And this is where it gets a little weird. The defendant claimed she armed herself with a knife in response to the victim having shoved her against the wall by the neck, although not choking her. And then she claimed that he threw her to the ground, but then allowed her to get up. And the defendant, Courtney Clenney, her body, her physical body, on the documented date of incident, there was no injuries to corroborate anything of her being choked or thrown, etc. And at no time did she claim that her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, was armed with any type of weapon either. So in describing the stabbing, this is what she claimed. And this has kind of been her very famous defense from the start. She claimed she threw the knife at Christian Obumseli from a distance of about 10 feet. She has stuck to this so much, in fact, and I'll get there, but during the pretrial hearing, her defense team actually brought a pig, literally a slaughtered pig, into the courtroom to show that this was possible. And I mean, they proved this false very quickly. They said the distance wasn't correct, something like that. And also, I mean, it's a pig skin is much different than human skin. But anyway, based on the location and depth, remember 8 centimeters of the stab wound, the medical examiner opined that throwing the knife from that distance would not have caused a fatal stab wound. And in trying to explain her actions that day to the police, Courtney Clenney stated, quote, "I don't think that this was, I don't know. I don't really know if this was justified at all," end quote. So it goes into the crime scene where the blood was, the blood transfer on the wall. Evidence really that Christian Obumseli collapsed in his room before attempting to return to the front door. So he was moving after this happened. There was a bloody knife in the living room by the couch. There was a bloody bed sheet as well. And I mentioned this, but upon police arrival, Christian Obumseli was kind of cradled in Courtney Clenney's arms at the intersection of the two guest bedrooms in a puddle of coagulated blood. So the amount of blood throughout the condo was, there was a lot of blood. Let's just put it that way. So this told police that he was bleeding for an extended period of time before police arrived. And that is really troubling, especially if she was making phone calls to her mother before she called 911 to try to save her boyfriend. Who knows what could have happened, you know, in that time period. Now, I am going to play you just very quickly the elevator video from the incident where Courtney Clenney attacked her boyfriend. And I am playing this because it was caught on camera. I am not sitting here saying that nothing ever happened to her. But I think that this is part of the case, and this will most definitely be brought up during the trial.
New evidence now this morning coming to light, revealing a really rocky relationship between a social media model and her boyfriend that she's been charged with killing. NBC6's Julia Bagg. She joins us live in Miami with more details on what we're learning about the couple's relationship. Julia.
Yeah, and Constance, you'll remember that killing happened here in Edgewater back in April at the couple's apartment. And the chilling audio you're about to hear apparently comes from secret recordings made by the model's boyfriend sometime before police claim she stabbed him to death.
Just shut up and let me slap you, dumb. You're not gonna slap me. Give me my phone. You have your phone.
That's an exchange between social media model Courtney Clenney and her late boyfriend, Christian Obumseli. Clenney can be heard screaming. There's a reference to slapping, and Clenney uses a racial slur. Also just released new photos showing that bloody crime scene in the couple's Edgewater apartment and building elevator. Even Clenney's body apparently covered in Obumseli's blood. NBC6 obtained the audio and images through a records request. Clenney is behind bars this morning, charged with second-degree murder. She claims she killed Obumseli in self-defense. Now, as we take another live look here at Edgewater, in a statement, Clenney's attorneys say she is not going to trial for previous arguments or recorded rants, but for defending herself. Live in Miami, Julia.
Okay, so if you're listening, then you didn't exactly get to see the elevator video of her attacking him. And yes, she is much smaller, but you did hear the fact that Christian Obumseli had recordings of his argument with Courtney Clenney very soon before she allegedly stabbed him. Now, something that I want to make very clear here, initially, police ruled Obumseli's death as self-defense, and Clenney was not charged right away. But after a 4-month investigation by Miami police, homicide detectives, and prosecutors, she was arrested on August 10th, 2022 in Hawaii. And she was actually undergoing treatment for substance abuse and post-traumatic stress disorder at a rehab facility when she was arrested. So the U.S. Marshals Service took her into custody on a charge of second-degree murder with a deadly weapon, and she was extradited to Florida, and she has been held there without bond, again, since August 26th, 2022. So that literally is almost 3 years to the day. Now, State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, she argued that the evidence, including the medical examiner's findings and the absence of physical injuries to Clenney's body to support her self-defense claim, pointed to red rum. And prosecutors emphasized that Christian Obumseli was unarmed, and the stab wounds, they would require significant force, which is inconsistent with Courtney Clenney's whole knife throwing story. So her defense team Frank Prieto and Sabrina Puglisi have been literally unwavering in their claim that Courtney Clenney acted in self-defense. And, you know, they've been doing interviews everywhere, and they made a statement to Rolling Stone, and they called her arrest a quote, absolute injustice, arguing that Clenney was a victim of domestic violence and human trafficking. That claim is interesting. Her team is describing Obumseli as the quote worst kind of abuser, manipulating Courtney Clenney and harming her in private. And Prieto also told CBS Miami that Clenney had no choice but to meet force with force to protect herself. And, you know, they have hinted that he pushed her to do things of a sexual nature. OnlyFans, you can sort of, I guess, graduate from doing that kind of content to do more content, or that could go a step further in, how do I say this properly, but, you know, removing all the clothes instead of some articles of clothing, and even meeting people in person. So again, the defense has challenged the medical examiner's conclusions and admissibility of the elevator video, arguing that it doesn't reflect the full context of their relationship. And they have absolutely disputed the prosecution's use of this video in court and in the media, claiming it's an attempt to, quote, taint the community and jeopardize Clenney's right to a fair trial. And the defense insists that the facts presented at trial will prove her innocence. I am really interested here, just because I think that this trial, it seems to have a lot of different elements and a lot of different perspectives. So I would love to know the truth, really. I would love to know the truth here. I have my opinions, but, you know, my opinions don't matter. It's the jury's opinions that matter. And from Christian Obumseli's family perspective, they firmly reject the self-defense claim. And his cousin, Karen Egbuna, she told CBS Miami, quote, "We have no cause to believe that this was a case of self-defense." And his brother said, quote, "There's many unanswered questions, and we just want justice for our brother." They describe Christian as a very soft-spoken man raised with strong morals, making the idea of him as the aggressor here unthinkable. And their family attorney, Larry Hanfield, has called Clenney's behavior, quote, out of control, quote, unhinged. And they cited some of the cell phone recordings where she used some racial slurs during arguments with Obumseli. That's crazy. And his family also filed a civil suit against the condo management company and Allied Universal Security, alleging that they failed to act despite knowing the couple's violent history. The lawsuit points to 6 police calls, the elevator video, and complaints from management and tenants as evidence of Clenney's violent behavior. And the family, sorry, I'm changing positions here to get comfortable. The family attorney on the civil suit, Michael Haggard, stated, quote, "This was a murder that the civil defendants knew was going to happen. Had they done anything, had they had her evicted, thrown out, been more aggressive with the police, or made any actions, this would have never occurred." End quote. I don't really know if I don't know if I believe that. So would it have happened somewhere else? Possibly. That's a tough one. I don't know if it's necessarily your building's job to prevent violence, but I completely understand where the family is coming from. Now, there has also been a crazy laptop controversy involving Courtney Clenney's parents. So in January of 2024, Courtney Clenney's parents, Kim and Deborah Clenney, they were arrested in Austin, Texas, on charges of unauthorized access to a computer, a third-degree felony in the state of Florida. Now, prosecutors allege that they, along with their daughter, Courtney Clenney, tampered with evidence by attempting to access Obumseli's laptop after his death. And arrest affidavits state that many of Obumseli's belongings, including the laptop, they were taken from the Miami apartment and not returned to his family or estate. And investigators believe that Clenney gave the laptop to her parents between the killing and her arrest. So a warrant for the iCloud accounts of Courtney Clenney and her parents revealed a group chat with their attorneys discussing how to access the laptop starting a month after Courtney Clenney's arrest. And in one message, her dad reportedly wrote, quote, "Hell yeah, that pin worked." An attorney cautioned him not to explore further to avoid becoming a witness. And Deborah Clenney, her mom, allegedly transported the laptop to Dallas to hand it over to an attorney who later passed it to an IT expert in Florida. And the defense, they called these charges, quote, trumped up to discredit the family. In June of 2024, Judge Laura Cruz ruled that prosecutors violated attorney-client privilege by accessing text messages and emails between Clenney, her parents, and their attorneys, including a document titled, quote, Courtney Checklist of Things to Do - Privileged. And that was a Word doc. So as a result, the hacking charges against all three of them were dropped. However, the defense really grew concerned about what prosecutors may have seen in the iCloud accounts, including communications about the case, investigation, witness testimony, strategies, and just financial obligations. So Clenney's defense team at this point, they had been pushing to disqualify the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office from the case, arguing that their access to privileged communication tainted the prosecution. They claimed that about 60 people in that office viewed Clenney's files, potentially compromising her right to a fair trial. And in May of 2025, Assistant State Attorney Khalil Quinnen withdrew from the case after being questioned under oath about these privileged materials, including the Courtney checklist document. So the deposition details, obviously those remain private, but the defense accused Quinnen of discovering a, quote, Team Courtney communication that they believed was privileged. So the remaining prosecutors, Sean Abuhoff and Kathleen Hogue, a chief assistant state attorney, they were forced to swear under oath before the judge this past month, August of 2025, that they did not personally review any privileged communications. The defense, however, accuses them of defending Quinnen's privilege breaches, and they continue to demand the entire office's removal, not just Quinnen. So prosecutors called the defense's request to question Quinnen a, quote, fishing expedition and harassment, arguing that it violates Florida and U.S. law. Now, if the judge disqualifies Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office, another county prosecutor's office could take over. So a hearing for this was set for September 12th, 2025, but a recent court appearance scheduled for August of 2025 to address a motion to suppress, quote, illegal recordings was reset for December. And subsequently, a trial date has actually been set for December. So this is a lot. It is a lot. So as of right now, the Miami State Attorney's Office is still on the case with only one prosecutor being kicked off. And Courtney Clenney remains behind bars as she awaits trial. So the defense's push again to disqualify the prosecutors really just add another layer of uncertainty here, along with the motion to suppress the, quote, illegal recordings. And also the fact that this case, you know, it has been widely publicized. And TMZ, they created a bit of a documentary about this. It's called Killer OnlyFans Model, A Deadly Love Story. And it features interviews with Courtney Clenney's parents who fear or who say that their daughter feared for her life. So my heart goes out to Christian Obumseli's family. I can't imagine what they're going through, especially when cases like this become just so public. But I encourage everyone to go back into my episode notes and check out the video that Jack and I did, just sort of going through a lot of Courtney's statements. And you can tell us what you think. You can tell me what you think. You can always email me your thoughts, Lauren@popcrime.tv. You can drop me a comment. I would love that. Or you know what? Leave me a review on Apple. But that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening and for being here with me. And I will have other live streams this week and other podcast interviews. So make sure you stay tuned.